All right, so I think we'll get started. I know we'll have a few people who come in. Hey, everyone, welcome to the Faculty Spotlight. My name is Miljan Trulov. I'm the Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid. And the biggest purpose of today is for you to come and to meet some of our faculty, some of the folks who'll be teaching you in the classroom, some of the folks you'll engage with. And I thought I'd start off by having both you, Denise, and Christian introduce yourselves, let folks know who you are, how long you've been at Reed, what department you're in particular, your area of emphasis or focus here at Reed. I think students are really curious about your area of study. And so, Denise, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm Denise Hare, and I teach economics at Reed. I've been here for quite a while, since the early 90s. So it's been interesting to see some changes that the college has gone through and that Portland has gone through over those years. Within economics, my main areas are labor economics and kind of broadly the area of development economics, but specifically in that I work on China. And so most of my research has been on China or on Asia at least. And I've had a lot of opportunities to travel and study and live in China over the years, which I really value. And I really enjoyed teaching courses in that area. Although this year I'm not teaching anything on China, I'm actually teaching some of my labor economics courses and then our introductory course. So I
Oh,
cover a lot of fields in the teaching realm.
nice. Very nice, Denise. Thank you very much. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, hello, I'm Christian. I teach in the Spanish department and also in the humanities program, so in Hum 110. I've been here like 10 years. Yeah, this is my 11th year here. I'm focused mostly on Latin American literature and politics, history, cultural production from the late 20th century, 21st century, mostly Mexico, Central America, and Peru. Well, I apart from teaching language, Spanish language, I also teach classes on different topics. For instance, I'm currently teaching a class on Latin American critical theory,
Mm.
and I also have classes on. I have a background in architecture and urban planning, urban studies, so I also teach classes on space and the relation between space and power and how they are portrayed in literature, and yeah, that type of classes and human too.
Well, it's fascinating. So, what's the best the book that's the best example of how space is used as power?
How space and power are related.
Yeah.
Oh, huh. For instance, this is a good example. If you traditionally towns like the building of power in American cities, for instance, where the state capital is situated, the state capital is in the middle of the plaza, right? So it's kind of in the middle, surrounded by streets, by whatever, right? In Latin America, it's usually the plaza is empty, right? So, and the institutions of power, for instance, the governmental building or it's on the sides or the church are on the sides of the plaza. So, who is looking who, right? It's the space is defined by the institution in the middle, or is defined by the people in the middle. So that's a quick example of how power is related to space, right?
It's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Christian.
Yeah, sure.
That's great. Just to let our guests know, the way that this works is, and many more of you are here, so thanks for joining us. This is our faculty spotlight. We've got a couple of our faculty here who are going to talk about their discipline, and we're going to talk about just a lot of things. Our goal is for you to get to know the folks who'll be teaching you in the classroom, for you to ask specific questions about them, their lives, also the curriculum here at Reed. We're going to cover a lot of ground. And we have enabled what we call a Q&A function. And so you can ask questions using that function. And what I'll do is, as you're adding questions, sometimes I'll combine a few and I'll throw them at our guest to respond. But I'll be dismissing those as I know I will answer those. There might be an occasion where I asked Denise or Christian to respond and share it with the entire group if I'm nervous that we won't get to it. But we're basically going to spend probably now the next 30 minutes, 35 minutes just having a conversation. And again, feel free to submit anything that you're curious about. Just to let you know that this session will be available online later, and we are using the transcribe function. So if there are any hearing challenges, please feel free to use that functionality to help you to assist you in following along. So, and we have another faculty member who is joining us. Hey, Shivani, how are you doing?
I am really sorry. I
No,
can't.
it's great. It's great to have you here. We knew that you were coming, and it's so nice. And what we've done so far is just have Christian and Denise introduce themselves,
Mhm.
what department you represent, and what your emphasis is within the department. But we're all excited to have you here.
Thank you. Well, I'm Shivani Ahuja. I'm a faculty in the chemistry department, and I am a biochemist. So the courses I teach are biochemistry. I'm also a physicist. So my grad school work was actually all physics. So I teach multiple different kind of courses in the department. I also teach physical chemistry and then general chemistry.
Oh, it's excellent. Thanks for joining us. And so, so for each of you to just to get folks started, one of the things that I think students sort of have a hard time imagining. We talk about this relationship that faculty have with students. Um, in particular, students call you all by your first name, and that is a different muscle that sometimes takes a few folks to exercise. And I want to start off there because I would like you to share what you think that does for your classroom or the classroom experience for students, that you're Christian, Shivani, Denise to them, rather than Professor Hare, Professor Kroll. How does that change the dynamic?
I can go first. It just represents I think the level of collegiality that we have with our students.
Mhm.
So kind of this sense that we're on the same plane rather than some sort of hierarchical structure. I kind of want to say informal, but sometimes informal isn't quite the right word because it feels really loose, I mean, it's more just kind of the way that you would engage with somebody that you have a lot of respect for, but you don't feel like you have to diminish yourself, right, in their presence, right? That there's some level of equality there.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think it makes it more approachable, perhaps. That's the word, approachable. And yeah, I don't know, it feels more a collaboration than a hierarchical relation, as Denise was saying. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It definitely makes it more approachable relationship. I mean, students do feel that um, they do feel that we are professors and all, but I feel like it makes it a little bit easier for them to reach out to us.
Absolutely. So when you see a student who you meet their first year or early in their read experience, and then you talk to them later on, what are the type of things that you see them doing their junior senior year that they couldn't that they did that you didn't see on display their first year? If you thought about their development, how they're thinking about the world, how they're thinking about some of the questions you ask them in class, talk a little bit about that progress that you note.
Okay, start a little bit here. I think one thing that really stood out to me when I, in fact, first started at Reed was that students, when they first come in, they are often very excited. They want to take a lot of courses in the first semester, which I think is fantastic. There's always a recommendation. We tell students how many is an ideal number, but they're excited to try new courses. And I think as they settle in to the Reed curriculum, then they're able to gauge many times better how many courses is an appropriate amount of load. Another big thing I have seen is this emphasis on grades. Like Reed really does. I would say when I first started at Reed, the de-emphasizing grade was a big thing for me. I was taught in a different way. I was coming from different colleges and universities, but I loved it how the de-emphasis really makes students focus on the feedback from the professors. And I think when they first come in, it does make them uncomfortable not seeing a proper number grade or letter grade on their individual problem sets, but a lot of feedback from the professors in general. I'm not saying everybody, but in general. And that does make them uncomfortable, which in some ways is good because it's good to be uncomfortable. It also encourages interaction. They come to your office hours. They want to know more about why they don't have a number grade. What does this mean? And then we can have more conversations on what the feedback is supposed to suggest, like what we are looking for. And I think by the time they're in their sophomore, junior, senior year, they get used to that. They really do focus on the feedback and like really engaging with those learning goals of the course than worrying about a specific grade.
I can. Oh, that's one of the things I love about teaching Hum 110, which is the class everybody takes the first year, is that this happens with almost all of them, but I remember specifically 3 or 4 cases in which they were students of mine in Hum 110. So I met them the very first day at Reed. And I was also on their thesis exam, the very last day at Reed. And like it's amazing, the level of complexity, elaboration of ideas, argumentation, writing is like, I don't know, it's exponentially, like you can definitely tell, right? Like, especially the level of complexity in their thinking, in the way they are analyzing things. That's to me is like the most obvious aspect of growth and self-confidence too. From coming the first day, not knowing how to, how to talk about things, to the very last day in which they feel self-confident and proud about the research they did, right? So that's beautiful to see.
Yeah, I would just add that you sort of see an increase in level of maturity and sophistication. So being more introspective and curious about things and maybe a little bit more flexible in terms of evaluating. So, it's like, over time, all these sort of analytical frameworks are seeping in so that, students maybe are in a little bit better position when they're leaving here to just kind of step back from a question and analyze it in a more distanced way and being less attached to a particular answer to a question right from the start.
Thank you for sharing that. And one of the reasons I wanted you to share that is because I think in some ways it gives our students confidence that you don't have to come here knowing everything. You come here being curious. And this is a place that will help guide you and lead you to this version of yourself that you imagined when you first started. And so I wanted them to hear it from you firsthand about, what that imagined human being looks like after 3 or 4 years of having this read experience. I've got a couple of questions I'm gonna throw out from our guest. Let's see, Denise, can you talk about econometrics? I'm interested in the intersection between math and economics and how I could combine those two areas of focus.
Yeah, I would say that goes way beyond just econometrics. Econometrics is when economists do statistical work, we call it econometrics. So it's really just statistics being performed by economists. But in economics, we use math in almost every realm of our work. And so there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of a combination. And in our major, we have a kind of a regular economics major, and then we have an economics major with a quantitative focus that involves doing 2 years of calculus and an introductory probability and statistics course. So that would be the way to combine those things, is to do the economics major with the quantitative focus. And you maybe would be even interested in doing some additional math beyond that, but that would be one of the options. But even if you don't do the quantitative focus major, you're still going to see a reasonable amount of math in the economics coursework, because it's a really important tool that we use in our work.
Shivani, does physical chemistry coursework differ from general chemistry?
So general chemistry encompasses every aspect of chemistry, like every subdiscipline, right? So when you take general chemistry courses, you get a little bit of flavor of all different subdisciplines of chemistry. Physical chemistry is one particular subdiscipline. It's essentially how you apply principles of physics to chemistry. It's heavily entrenched in methods development, techniques that we use to study atoms or studies molecules at an atomic level. So a lot of conversation that happens in physical chemistry revolves around how do atoms interact and what kind of techniques we use to probe them. And yeah.
A great follow-up question. I'm curious what you all think about this. Um, with the emphasis on feedback and not supplying students with a traditional grade, how do faculty guarantee or communicate how a student is currently doing in the regarded class? And I'll just note that students do get a grade. They can also request the grade, at some point in time. And I often say that it changes your relationship with learning. You're focusing on the content and not this grade, but actually the conversation and the learning tenets. But how do you communicate how a student is doing?
Uh, First, there are some like already set in place ways, like more institutionalized ways, which is 4-week comments, 8-week comments, in which usually when a student is not doing great, they will get a comment on how to improve their performance, right? And those comments are mandatory if you are what will be the equivalent of, I think, a C or less than a C. So you will know if you're not doing well in class in that way. It's a way. Another way is that, at least in my case, I do tell students, come to my office hours. We need to talk about something, how to improve your performance. So there is direct communication. And there's also good communication when they're doing great, right? Not only when they're doing not that great, right? So I would say that it's more um, customized in that sense, right? You have this institutionalized ways in which they will find out if they're not doing as great as they should, but there are other personal ways in which we give feedback to them directly. In Hume, for instance, we meet with them like I meet with students like at least 7 or 8 times a year for each of their papers. So that's a moment in which we have a conversation on how they're doing, right, in the class. And usually because we see each other so often, we also talk about their other classes, right? So how they're doing. And in those instances, sometimes I suggest to them, maybe you should go talk to your professor, right? So we kind of help each other too, right?
And Christian, you were talking about the paper conference when a student gets a paper back, you sit down and you meet with them for, at least a half hour and
Mhm.
discuss their paper, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's part of Hume 110 is you write 4 papers in the fall and 3 papers in the spring. And then you meet with your professor for each paper, usually about half an hour, depends, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, in which you focus on your own writing, right? So the idea is we faculty help them and we meet them at their level, right? Some you don't have to come to read knowing exactly how to write, right? Some it depends on many other factors. So we try to customize what we do with each student on their writing, how to improve their writing. In some cases is working on their argumentation. In some other cases, working on how to use sources. In some other cases, is how to build more consistent arguments. It depends, right? And it changes depending on each paper. But yes, at least you meet 7 times with your faculty to discuss your writing in person.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And Christian, can you just briefly explain what Humanities 110 is, the shared course that all students take at Reed in their first year?
Sure. Yeah, that's the shared course that everybody takes. I think it's the only like mandatory course you have to take at Reed, regardless of your major. And it's a year-long course in which it's the same syllabus for absolutely everyone. So we all read exactly the same texts, and then you are divided in conferences of about 16, 17 um, students in which you discuss the text with your what we call the conference leader, which is the faculty leading the discussion. It's discussion based. It's not that component of the class is discussion based. You meet for 3 hours a week, either 3 times for an hour or 2 times for an hour and a half to discuss the material for a given day. You also have to see or attend lectures. Some lectures are in person, some lectures are online. So for each day, there's a lecture and some reading. And then you meet in your own group, like small group. You keep that group for the whole year. You have the same faculty for the whole year in most cases. And so you actually get to know each other very well, and there's a moment in which you feel like really comfortable sharing whatever you think on the topics we discuss, right? And the fall is at the moment is mostly focused on the ancient Mediterranean, and the spring is focused on Mexico City and the Harlem Renaissance. So we focus on different areas, but the emphasis of the course is in the learning how to not necessarily learning, but at least improving how you analyze a text, how you read a text, how you write on a text, how you argumentation, your critical thinking about a text, all those like basic skills you learn in college and you need for the rest of the classes, you start learning them in here in one time, right? With a focus on different topics and main themes like diversity, like race, like how power is legitimized, depending on what we are focusing at the moment.
Thank you very much. So the next question I think is great, and I would love for all of you to answer this. It's specifically for you, Shivani, but I think it's appropriate across the board. Someone is curious about the benefits of studying chemistry at a small liberal arts college, like Reed, but you can specifically Reed versus a large research institution with a graduate program. And I'm just going to start off by talking a little bit about the Carnegie classification. So Carnegie classification, an institute that designates type of schools, national liberal arts schools, research institutions. Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they actually updated their classification system. Um, Schools were recognized for research colleges if they were just large universities, and they said there are actually a lot of other places that are doing this really well. And so they identified 29 national liberal arts schools that are now research designated institutions. These are places that do research really well. And one of the factors they looked at were schools that spent at least about $2.5 million in research funds on average in the last 3 years. Of those 29 schools, Reed is fourth on the list. We dedicate about $5.5 million towards research. The company that we keep is not surprising, but I wanted to say that because I want to make it clear that you're not choosing between a place where you can do research and a small liberal arts. Liberal arts schools do wonderful research. And this was, I think, an important step in helping students identify places where this is an opportunity that they can have as a part of their college experience. So I'm sort of prefacing this, but I'd love for y'all to talk a little bit about why would someone join your department at a school that's small liberal arts college versus a larger university.
Yeah, so I wanted to just follow up one thing that Millian just said, that um, at a small liberal arts college, it's not that there's not emphasis on research, there's a lot of emphasis on research, but the emphasis also on you as an undergraduate student, right? It's a undergraduate institution where that's our biggest strength. And the smaller class sizes makes it really helpful for us to interact with our students very closely. And one of so I guess there are a couple of things here. One is the fact it's a small liberal arts college, and also the fact that it's a research college. There's a lot of emphasis on research. So I want to first emphasize the fact that as a smaller college with smaller class sizes and the liberal arts education, which is more holistic, you are being exposed to a lot more than chemistry, right? Like Christian just talked about our Hume course, which is something that all students have to take. And I wish I had gone to a liberal arts college, but was exposed to more than just sciences, which was not at all a possibility where I was coming from. So I think that plays a big role in how it shapes you as an individual. Like Denise mentioned, how during the course of the time at Reed, you really see the students mature into individuals who have this independent way of thinking. And I don't think it just comes from the fact that you're doing one major. It comes from the fact that you're being exposed to so much more here than your major courses. So I think that's one big difference. The second thing I want to highlight about the research is that here, undergraduates drive the research, right? They are the ones driving the research. You're not part of not that there's anything wrong when being part of a big lab at an R1. I think it's a fantastic experience. And we do encourage our students to go out over the summer, do internships outside, or involve themselves later on. But here, undergraduates are the one driving our research, and They get to interact a lot with the faculty. They get to learn all the skills from depends on which field you are in. I'm talking purely from a chemistry point of view. I'm an experimental researcher, and I don't think there's anything that we don't do in the lab that we do in the lab that does. But I mean, there's nothing in the R1 lab that doesn't get done in our lab, right? Students learn all the skills from ground up. And the other big, I think, difference is that we are training you. These are meant to be training labs, right? We are not expecting you to come with any prior research experience. We are training you to become those scientists who are then going to go out and explore other research opportunities at bigger schools for graduate school opportunities and stuff. I don't know if that enough answers that question. Million, you're muted.
So many years on Zoom, I still don't know how to work it. Denise, Christian, why your department? Why do what you do here at a small liberal arts school versus a large university? What type of experience are we affording students by having them come here?
I would say that students are going to have more opportunities to get into research projects at the undergraduate level. I think in a large university research program, you're going to get crowded out by the graduate students. Or if you are getting into a project, you're probably going to be working directly for a graduate student and not really having that much engagement with the principal investigator that would be a faculty member. So here you cut out that middle layer of the graduate students and you're working directly with us. So I think it might be a little bit more of a rewarding experience from that angle.
Can you all talk about? Oh, sorry, Christian, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, can you all talk about? I mean, research doesn't just happen in STEM. Research happens in all of our departments. Can you all talk about a recent research project that you're working on with one of your students? You might think our guests might think is both a good example and interesting.
I've been working with students. I'm right now looking at the educational system in China and comparing the vocational track to the general track. So people often hear about like the European, like the German system is really famous for having a split at the high school level where kids are split between the vocational track and the general track, and China follows that model. So about half the kids go into vocational high schools and half go on to more general academic programs that are more likely to lead to university degrees. But it's kind of interesting to see what happens to the ones that do go through the vocational track because they have a wide range of options open to them as well. So anyway, that's been the focus of my most recent research. And so I've needed a lot of help with coding. So I have students doing all kinds of coding exercises with me in terms of processing the data and organizing the data. So that's what students have been doing for me the last few summers. And mostly my work is in a statistical package that's called Stata that a lot of social scientists use. But I have one real crackerjack student who's been able, I think he's working in Python. And so he's essentially automating this data within Python code so that, he doesn't have to keep running the same programs repeatedly, but the programs kind of run themselves. So anyway, I don't fully understand everything that he's been doing, but he's been really knocking himself out to streamline our work. So it's been fun to see him do that.
That's great. Christian, how about you? Any research that students are working on with you or projects that
Not at the moment, but in past years, I was working with a student who was helping me finding mostly by bibliography for a project I was working on Latin American guerrillas. So it was mostly an archival type of research, looking for articles, looking for um, mostly for articles and that type of sources, and going through them and doing kind of like an annotated bibliography, right? For the project. So that's one that will say that's kind of a common research opportunity in the at least in the humanities language departments Right.
Mhm. That's great. How about you, Shivani?
So, I'm an experimentalist, so my research is all done on the bench, and there's no way I can do everything myself.
Yeah.
So, um, uh, my thesis students and undergraduate students who are student researchers during the semester or over the summer, they help me a lot with my work. So, I'm a structural biologist. I study structure of proteins that govern everything that allows us to live and breathe. All the difference is that I study those proteins in the tiny bacteria, and I'm trying to understand how bacteria gets to be so virulent, how it causes all these diseases. And so at an atomic level, my students and I are trying to figure out what do these proteins look like and how do they function. And so to do that, we use a lot of biophysical techniques to probe them. So we have these really powerful microscopes with electron beams that interact with these little atoms in the protein, and we are able to then reconstruct the entire three-dimensional structure of the proteins. And so the students in my lab, they learn how to make proteins in bacteria, how to take it out of the bacteria, how to make it stable, how to use these techniques to then create those three-dimensional structures. And once we are able to do that, they help us understand how do these proteins work in the context of the whole organism. And the
Mm.
hope is that that information gets translated either for drug development or gives us some insight into how it may work in higher level organisms like human beings.
I mean, I always get the sense that at a school like ours, students actually get to do more
Mhm.
because of the volume. It's like when you work in a small office, you end up covering more ground, and that I think is one of the real benefits. And I'll just say, yeah, students can do internships in the summer. They can do them on campus. They can do them at other institutions. We have students who are Rhodes Scholars, Fulbright Scholars. You name it. This is a place where students do. What I've always said, I had a lot of conversations with alumni, and one of the things I noticed from the Reed alumni is they say, and then I did this, and then I did this. They have an idea of an experience and they take advantage of it. And so I think they just have that capacity based on the way that they've been trained here. So I think that's one of the things that opens up for students. So y'all, if a family comes here, they're hungry, good restaurant for them to eat at. What are you suggesting for them? Christian, I know you know some good places to eat.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. No, Portland is a really good like food place. Still like quite affordable still compared to other cities. So you mean like places, precise places where you can?
Yeah, give me a couple of your favorites. Yeah.
Oh, I will have to say a foodie is one of my favorites. It's the best ramen you will ever have.
Oh, furry
Totally agree.
ramen.
A foodie is fantastic. And another one, what's the name of that one? Oh, come on. Oh, I forgot the name, but it's really good. Oh, it's kind of like, I don't know if HLVL is a place of essentially Thai soups, which is
Wow.
quite good in an unassuming spot there in Powell's. So that's quite good. Yeah.
A furry is great. When I'm heading home late some nights, I'll stop by a furry on the way home and grab grab some ramen on the way back.
Yeah.
Good
Portland is fantastic.
suggestion.
Yeah. I was
No,
going to
there's,
say that is such a hard question. Portland is like, I know people say San Francisco is the food capital. I would say Portland is incredible food scene. I mean, not only restaurants, we have this huge food cart culture, and they're just incredible. The food carts all across Portland. You can have restaurants from like which are very reasonable to very expensive. There's a whole range, but I would say it's really hard to pick the favorites because there are just so many gems all across the city and even in the neighbor like suburban areas.
Shivani, you got to jump in. You got to give us one
Oh,
restaurant.
okay,
Yeah,
well, I
you
have
got
a
to.
lot. So I will say, okay, I'll say just around Reed. Okay.
Okay.
Like I love banh mi, and there's this little Portland cafe. It's a Vietnamese coffee cafe, and it makes only coffee and banh mi's, and they go so well together, and they're delicious. Then we have these incredible, very tasty tacos food carts right across from 28 West. Gigantic. It's my favorite hangout with my labs. A lot of our group meetings only after you're 21. Happens at Gigantic, right very close to thesis orals, because we just go there and talk about what thesis orals look like over a beer. And it has these really nice Hawaiian food cart right next to it, which makes one of the best fries I have ever eaten, ever. Like, it's really good. So those are a few things just right around Reed.
I approve of all your
And
answers.
one of the best pan masubis I've tried are
Yes, their masubis are very good.
Yeah. How about you, Denise?
I live on or just off Division Street, so I don't know. There's so many restaurants. My favorite closed though. So
Oh no. So if
yeah,
you
it's kind
had
of
to
a
send them,
revolving door.
I'll let our guest know Denise is in a challenging spot. Division is a street where all of the restaurants are. And so you're kind of spoiled by your location, aren't you? What do you think of Atlas Pizza? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I like Atlas Pizza, and then the one on Gladstone. Is it just called Gladstone Pizza? That's pretty good.
I think Gladstone Pizza also shut down, Denise. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
did it?
I
Yeah,
think
that's what
so.
happens.
Yeah.
But there's one up Woodstock too. I think it's called Bridgetown. The Chicago style pizza. That's good too. So
They're really good.
And then
Yeah.
we had this little pod of food carts that recently opened up Heist, like a
Oh yeah.
nice walking distance from Reed, which is also fantastic. They have now a huge indoor sitting area for the winter time.
And folks have probably seen our videos. We have more food carts per capita in Portland than any other city in the United States. And it's where a lot of our restaurateurs get their start. So going to food carts are great because you get a lot of variety, you can get a lot of different food, and it's exceptional. So I'll double down on that. So, all right, a couple more questions from our students. Let's see. We answered that one. Doo, 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 doo. So, this is sort of an interesting question, and it's one I've been talking a lot about this year. This idea that read is mostly theoretical, and students wondering, like, do I actually get practice? Do I get the hands-on? And so hearing people thinking about Reed being fairly theoretical focused, I'll keep it open. Does that sound right to you? Is there variance by major? Do you think we do both a little bit theory and practice? Is there anything to that?
You can get started if you like.
That sounds
I think I can comment on my department. I would say it's completely opposite of how I think about our department. And the chemistry major or the related majors, like we have an interdisciplinary biochemistry and molecular biology major, and the ES Chem major. I think in the chemistry department, you definitely have all your courses. There's a lot of theory in order to build your fundamentals, but almost I would say most courses are associated with lab courses. So we always have, so general chemistry has almost a year-long lab. Most of our advanced level courses will all, so if they're year-long sequences, there'll be at least one lab associated with, so advanced labs. You do get a lot of hands-on experience if in the realm of chemistry. But also, I think this definition of theory versus practice is also related to how much are you exposed to what's currently happening in the field. And how you define a hands-on experience can also take many different definitions, right? So you have lab work, that's a hands-on experience. A lot of our courses focus a lot on looking at latest literature, what's happening in the field. That also in some ways is giving you a taste of beyond reading from the book, how that is being applied to problems in chemistry and biology and environmental sciences, analytical chemistry. So I would say it's actually, I have never thought of read as being very theoretical only. So from my lens.
Thank you, Shivani.
I think sometimes when people say theory, I think what they really mean is just academic. And I think Reed is a super academic place. And so a lot of the work that we do here, our scholarship is aimed towards academic journals. And so we're really engaged in academic conversations, as opposed to doing like market research or, like what an economist might do, like, trying to sort of figure out how to sell a new product, right? I mean, we're really doing an academic question that has an academic outlet in terms of its relevance. But theorists are pretty rare. I mean, at least in economics, people who do pure theory, that's pretty rare. And so really our entire department is full of people doing applied work, which means that we work with data. That's just really what it means, is that we work with data. And that's good for students because it means there's more RA jobs, right? There's more opportunities to get involved with us because, if you're doing pure theory, you're kind of just working in a little vacuum a little bit, because there isn't really that much hands-on stuff to do. So we're academic, but we're very applied in terms of the kinds of academic work that we do, which means that we have a lot of applications to policy kinds of questions and so on.
And speaking from the language departments or humanities in general, I will say, like, I'm guessing I cannot talk of practice in the same of applied something as the way science will talk about it, but that's what I try to do in my classes is first kind of like blur the line between practice and theory because you cannot have one without the other. And the way I do it is usually, yes, I do include theory in my classes, but for me, the practice becomes films and literature. So that's the way I combine both. And reading literature as theory or reading theory as a literary text too. So how the two are in discussion and what that shows us about the world first. And second, many of my classes are like thematically current. For instance, the class I teach on decentering the human, which is related to the Anthropocene. So how, on a practical level, how thinking about the human in a different way as not the center of anything changes the way we should live our lives, right? So the way I understand practice or pragmatical in my classes is probably different as in the sciences. But if you understand it as acting and reacting to the world as a reality, yes, definitely it's there, right? But yes, there's also a theoretical component, which means like theory text that we discuss in class, right? That helps us inform our understanding of, I don't know, the world in general. Yeah.
I think also because we're developing critical thinkers. And that doesn't have to be mutually exclusive with folks who are also really good at practice, but it's one of the things that makes them good at the practice. So I appreciate the feedback. And I think also along with these themes, what I'll also say to families is having a great education doesn't mean we're not also developing you for a career. And so folks from the Center from Life Beyond Read, their goal is to make sure that they connect with every student within their first year and to map out what experiences they'll have for internships, externships, for fellowships. And they're often partnering with our faculty to make sure that you're getting advising from both your curriculum, for the curriculum, but also advising for whatever your outcome is intended to be. And so you don't have to pick either or. We are truly developing an entire student to be successful out in the world once they're done. We've got two more questions. I think these will be our last couple of questions. Um, Interesting. So maybe just one person. Folks are curious about a recent Paideia class that you may have heard about or participated in or taught. I'm not sure if any of you have jumped into Paideia recently. I'm also happy to share mine. One of my favorite Paideia classes was someone who it was the year I taught a class on comic book collecting because people don't know this, I have boxes behind me of hundreds of comic books. So I taught folks how to hold them and curate them so you wouldn't damage them. And then I had another student who taught that same year about Marvel movies and the depiction of a hero. And so that was a really cool time to talk about both of our projects together. But they really sort of cover the gambit in terms of the type of things that you'll see covered. Anyone participate in the Great Reedy Bake Off last weekend? Shivani? All right.
I didn't participate. I got to judge. I was
Oh,
very
were
excited.
you a judge?
I was pretty excited. And that was the finale. And so I love Top Chef, and I've always dreamt of judging food competitions. I was so excited that I got to judge the Reedy Bake Off, and they did a fantastic
You've got
job.
to tell everybody what that is.
So Reedy Bake Off is, well, okay, I may get a few details wrong, so just correct me if I am. Basically, it's an annual event that happens where anybody, the students, staff, faculty are invited to make teams, and they participate in this Bake Off. If you have ever watched the British Bake Off, I'm forgetting the name of the show. It's along the similar lines. You have multiple different rounds of competitions, and it starts with multiple teams. I think this time the first round, if I'm not wrong, had about 30 teams of anywhere between 4 to 8 to 10 people on each team. And I got to judge the finale where it was 3 teams, and the desserts were so intricate. I was really impressed, and it was live. So in most of the other rounds, the teams bake goods in their own kitchens and bring them to read, and then there is a panel of judges that taste them and then evaluate them. For the finale, the cooking happens at Reed, so in our commons, and the head baker from Bon Appetit, who runs our commons kitchen, he's the one who's really involved in making sure everything is running smoothly and is very much a part of judging the competition. So there's a lot of fun.
It was the best. If you all were here for Read Admit Day, you could join for the Great Reedy Bake Off. I went for the second round. Check out our Instagram. There's some great photos there. We're actually making a video. We're going to shoot that out in a little bit, but it's just one of the many traditions we have on campus. And Shivani, the nice part is it's not just students, not just faculty, not just it's everybody. And the teams are mixed. It's everyone, and everyone comes out for it. So it's just a
And just to be fair, the judges are, there's a student representative, there's a staff representative, and there's a faculty representative, and a proper true baker who knows how to bake. I love baking, but I wouldn't say I'm a great baker. So we have that too.
it's the Simon Cowell of baking. So the last question, this is a little bit about pedagogy. You've been teaching in the class year in, year out. They're tried and true methods that you're using from year to year. But what changes about your class with each new semester? One thing I'd love for one of you to talk about is just the CTL also, because we don't, the way I'm thinking, we don't just do the same thing every year. We're thinking about how information gets, how students are thinking about information, and sometimes those are different methodologies. But I'll let you answer, and if someone could talk about the role of the CTL too, that would be fantastic.
I can say something about the CTL that I've been involved in multiple times over the years. And here's where students can get involved. The CTL is the Center for Teaching and Learning. And when it was first opened about 10 years ago, one of the first programs it offered was what's called student teaching consultants. And so you can partner with a student who's not in your class to essentially sit in like maybe once a week or something and take notes and give feedback on the teaching. And that's been a really transformative experience. I've done that a number of times. And there have been times where I've handpicked the student. There's been times when I said, well, pick somebody for me, but they have to be an economics major. And more recently, I've just opened up, just pick somebody that you think would be good. And it's really fun to have a student who's not even an economics student who's sitting in my classes and then just commenting on what they're seeing, how students are engaging and, oh, you had your back to the class, right? When you were, putting that up on the board or, you were standing in the corner and, you weren't looking at this one person who was trying to talk. So, really just sort of keeping me on my toes in terms of how I'm engaging with students in the classroom. And it's fun. It's another way that you kind of build a partnership with the student. And, it can be somebody completely outside of your field. And so you might never ever meet them other than this one experience. But I think it's been a really rewarding thing that I've been able to do with students that I've really benefited a lot from as in growth in my teaching as well.
I just want to add a little bit to the student consultant program. I fully agree with Denise. I have benefited a lot from it. And what's fantastic is that the student consultant who worked with me, they made like a whole chart of the room. And they were able to figure out every time when I ask a question or I'm like engaging students in this active learning like activities, where most of the answers are coming from and how it moves around during the course of the semester. It was really informative. And the student worked with me to create feedback forms. And they were not in chemistry at all. They were from outside a different department. And it was really interesting to see their feedback coming from a completely different department and having not taken any courses with me in the past. It was very powerful. One thing I was going to add is I wish we would repeat the same way we teach every year. I think the biggest problem is, and CTL has a huge role to play in it, is this idea that, so I'm a junior faculty. I've been at Reed at 6 years, and I think every year you feel like, oh, I want to change my course. I mean, I don't have years of experience yet. I'm hoping to reach a place where I say, oh, this year I'm going to do exactly what I did last year. I don't think that happens very often. I think every year you want to include, change things a little bit because you've heard something or you've attended a workshop or you couldn't cover something last year. I think a lot of times things don't, I think it's in fact the opposite. That's what I would say. Like I have really benefited from CTL being a junior faculty. Like right now we have a workshop on grading for growth. So grading is a big conversation at Reed, and it's been incredible to learn how everyone around Reed thinks about grading and things that are available out there. And it forces you to constantly then change the way you are doing your courses and grading them, etc.
And just to add, also the structure or the framework might be the same sometimes. For instance, in Hume, when I've taught Hume many times already, but it's amazing the level of influence the students themselves have in how the class is run. And what, for instance, Hume 110 is kind of an open class in that sense, but the dynamics of the class itself and the students start to like focus on certain topics that, for instance, my class last year just didn't think about, right? So that changes also, like the class changes each year depending on the students too, and the type of
Okay.
discussions they're in.
Thank you so much. I appreciate how you've all shared how the classroom and your teaching. I mean, these are all living, dynamic components of an education, and schools are dynamic. Schools are changing, and I think you've all captured that really well. We have Harper here who had another restaurant suggestion, Jade Bistro. So I just wanted to give a nod out for someone who was so excited about sharing restaurants at the Jade Bistro in Sellwood, which is a neighborhood that's adjacent to Reed. I've been there. It's excellent. So another good restaurant addition. Denise, Christian, Shivani, thank you so much for spending time with us and with our families. And what I'll say to our families is thank you for joining us today. We have two more faculty spotlights. And then, as many of you know, as we move into the middle of March and beginning of April, or all of April, our events really pick up. We will have department-specific sessions where faculty will be doing a deep dive into their program. So make sure you monitor your email. You'll get a message from us either on a Sunday, a Tuesday, or a Thursday, and those have critical information to help you figure out how to get the information you need to make an informed decision. And we promise you, it's not just the same thing over and over. You're going to meet Dr. K and I for tough questions. President Bilger, who's Audrey, is going to join us, and a lot of students who are just going to talk to you about their own experience. And I know I'm going to see a lot of you on campus for our Read Admit days, which are most Mondays and Fridays on campus. And if you have trouble getting to campus, we have programs that'll help support you. So keep an eye out on email for that. But so glad you're here. I hope this was helpful, and we will be in touch and talk to you soon. Thank you all. Have a good night and eat well. Bye bye.